All right. Well, everybody, thanks again for joining us for another town hall. Today, we don't have too big of an agenda. If you saw in the update I posted, I'd like to take the bulk of today to talk a little bit about these town halls, about the governance workshops on Saturday, and kind of looking at them from a 1,000-point view and figuring out how we can improve them, how we can increase participation, and make sure that everyone's time is used efficiently and that they're effective meetings, and that we get good results from them. But before we dive into that and open that up for everybody, just wanted to quickly mention that if you didn't see we have 2 new proposals that are live for voting right now. So that's in our announcements channel. So if you check out the announcements channel, we have KIP 15 and KIP 16, both that are now up for voting. And so KIP 15, which was the labs budget, KIP 16 was about sunsetting the hiding vaults, but more specifically also immediately ending the hiding vaults rewards program as well. So yeah, if you haven't checked those out, please do get your votes in for that as well. But before we dive into the agenda, I just wanted to, first open it up to any folks that if they had a specific draft or anything that they wanted to provide any commentary for, that I'd give the stage for that. And if not, then we can dive kind of right into the meat of the conversation today. So does anyone have any kind of quick, kind of more overarching comments or questions about any drafts or anything else before we dive into kind of the workshop theme today? I'll give you a chance to raise your hand if you want to provide anything. All right, I'm not seeing anything else come through here, so why don't we just go on ahead and start this and talk about first the town halls. So for me, town halls have been a great thing that we started back in October. This was kind of my idea to start really understanding more about crowd consensus, give people the ability to kind of voice their thoughts and opinions on what we're doing, and really kind of help us drive governance forward. And that was kind of the initiation of these town halls. And then it became a staple of our week, where every Friday we'd get together and meet and talk. So I kind of want to just pause there and get community feedback on the town halls and what people think about them, if they feel like they're useful right now, if they're being used properly. Just any kind of comments that anybody's got, and I'm going to be taking notes as well. So just if anyone kind of wants to kick us off with some thoughts about how town halls have been going, I'd welcome you to raise your hand and hop up on stage. It's like everybody seems to be very happy with them. Nobody's got any comments here? Very interesting. What about ideas for increasing participation? Some things that have been kicked around, where we've used POAPs before. We could have, other style kind of NFT style opportunities. I've even heard kind of raffles and other stuff that could be given away, or just other ways that we can incentivize folks to participate. A quiet group today. Oh, hey, Joe, hop on up. How you doing? Joe, is your mic going?
I've been having more issue with my mic than usual. Sorry about that.
No worries, bud. Wait, I can hear you loud and clear.
Okay. I just had been listening in, and I wanted to say that I have enjoyed the town hall format pretty thoroughly so far. I have found that it is one of the easier places to onboard into what the KeeperDAO side of things does, and really gives a deeper view of what's happening in the weeds of it. It's a new way to plug in for somebody that doesn't have a ton of experience. And so I put a lot of value on the things that I hear in this discussion area because it is the way that I become familiar with all of the details of what KeeperDAO does. And that seems to be one of the most pressing things with many in the ecosystem. They require a several minute discussion just to understand what KeeperDAO is before they can even get to appreciate what it is that it brings to the table. So I see this as a great venue for communicating those sorts of things to the internal community in such a way that they can then propagate that information efficiently to the external community.
Awesome. Appreciate the feedback. And something that I've been thinking about, as we are transitioning from monthly recaps to quarterly recaps now, and we'll be seeing that Act 5 recap being published relatively shortly as well. I start to think more about if somebody isn't scrolling through our announcements channel or our Twitter feed all the time, how are they staying most up to date with us? And I think you're right. I think that the most regular bit of communication that people could come to expect is here at the town hall. And I think that obviously our governance issues are discussed, and it's also kind of ventured its way down into business development and partnerships as well. But I would like to see maybe if people had other thoughts about um, you know uh, other ways that we could get together for events like this to share information or to brainstorm ideas or things. Because right now, in terms of really kind of community participation in this kind of round table style, we have the town hall and we have the governance workshop on Saturday, and that's really kind of the most collaborative way people can get together to discuss, to share their ideas, to work on things. But there are other things that get discussed all the time on the weeks, whether it's partnership ideas, new integration potentials, investment ideas, things like that. And so something that I've seen some other DAOs and other kind of Discord servers do is, they even have kind of these like individual specialized meetings. So let's say that you are really interested in business development. Well, if we had a DAO wide kind of biz dev brainstorm session once a week, is that something that people would be interested in, or is that a direction that we could see taking kind of DAO collaboration to the next level? And these are all ideas that I've been kicking around, but haven't really landed on anything yet. And so I'd welcome feedback from what people have seen successfully in other servers, other DAOs, and ways that we can kind of grow beyond the let's call it the 25 to 65 people ish that join our town halls and community calls, and really trying to kind of build you know let's call it meaningful engagement in the DAO activities as well. So I'd welcome any other comments if people want to share stuff that they've seen in other DAOs, things that are successful, or if they have other commentary on that. Please raise your hand, and I'd welcome you to come up and share your thoughts. Joe, I know that you have a solid you come from a pretty solidly engaging DAO server. What would be your thoughts on great ways to kind of regularly update and engage folks in a style like this?
Well, off the top of my head, being able to relate to the topics that are most valuable to the DAO at large is going to be a good way to demarcate those different conversations. When Bankless DAO organized and started making a lot of these calls, the time was largely dependent on who was available for those initial meetings. And those times have migrated a little here and there to accommodate the changes in membership. But for the large part, they ossified pretty early on around those initial time slots. And so having something that is as calendar neutral as possible for the highest value meetings is going to be important for placement. And then
Mm-hmm.
the lower priority items can tend to fill out the fringes. And by doing this, you will maximize the participation just because time restrictions are something that we're all going to have to adhere to at one level or another. And so plotting for those time zones and hitting maximum overlap is going to be a valuable trait. And then letting the priority of the specific demarcations be determined by the group at large and that which they think is worth spending their collective effort on is going to be where it would be best to break those things out. So I know that there's been a lot of talk recently about SOFONs and compensation there with governance. There's been talks about the development of the new ecosystem. Slip my brain right now, and the sunsetting of
Mm-hmm.
the current one, and all of these different aspects. Some of them are unique to governance proposals, which there could be a sort of Socratic seminar floor where there is a conversation about whatever the going proposals are, which would be kind of a general melting pot. And then that conversation could go into a more specific location after the fact or in a simultaneous way that really gives a home to each conversation topic and allows for open participation without uh, overwhelming the general conversation, because a lot of things will get missed unless you are paying close attention. But if you're able to curate for the things that you have the biggest stake in, it makes it a lot easier to pigeonhole yourself into the places where you want to contribute the value. If we are facilitating that in this format, then I think that's going to provide maximum growth.
So, Joe, you talk about kind of potentially breaking out topics to allow kind of a little bit more deeper thought and conversation on what traditionally have you seen as the best venue for that? Would you say that that's also inside of Discord? Would you say that's driving people through our forum for posts and comments? Where have you seen that kind of land?
Most of the time, it winds up in the places where the communication is most active. And then it is the best parts of those conversations that are harvested to the lower level media. And the longer the time frame is between communications, the more that information will tend to be. So if you want to be developing and growing and generating something fresh and new, you want it to be as real time as possible. That's why ETH Denver feels much more hectic and filled with energy than does a town hall, but then that has more of an energy than a chat room does, unless the membership is vastly larger. It all depends on that relative scale. But the more communication in a moment, the more granular you're going to want to get. So that tends to lend itself to a proliferation within the channels of the DAO as much as the Discord servers will allow for, but limited by the ability to curate the view for the individual member, which I'm working with a team called GM.xyz on a product that's going to hopefully put the control of that sort of curation back into the hands of the user and provide a much better UX for this Web3 experience. But we'll see how that turns out.
Awesome. Hey, something that comes to mind here is that you guys have, a real large population of contributing and listening individuals. Have you guys given consideration to, say, breaking up a conversation into kind of time zone sections? Like you'll have, kind of like a North America section and like a European session or something like that, where, just because the majority of folks have been landing on stuff that works for, say, me here in the afternoons, Eastern time, doesn't mean that folks over in Asia or India or something like that have the opportunity to join these calls unless they're up in the middle of the night or something like that. Have you guys done multiple sessions of the same event or seen any success around that?
There hasn't been too much proliferation in that. That's been kind of a trouble point in terms of real time solving that from our existence. But the creation of topical channels and recording of calls so that those who are async can catch up and then add input in those channels does alleviate that pain point enough that it is not a high priority compared to some of the other things on the coordination menu. But it is still a pain point nonetheless.
Gotcha. Okay. Appreciate the feedback there. Why don't I pause and just see, these are some great thoughts from Joe. Do we have anyone else that wants to provide any feedback on town halls? I mean, even anything from the time of day to, say, Dietz needs to go hire a note taker for this. So we have some professional style notes for everything in addition to the recording. I'm open to any suggestions here of how this group wants to see us improve. G-Man, hey, why don't you hop on up here and share your thoughts? I just accepted your request to join the stage. I believe some people have said if you're having trouble accepting the invite to come up to speak, it helps to minimize and then reopen up the window for Discord as well.
There.
There you go. Got you in here.
Sweet. Hello.
Hey,
So,
how you doing?
have we thought about ever hosting this on Twitter? I know some projects do host on Twitter, and Twitter also invites other people through like notifications that it's going on and kind of just reminds them that it's happening and invites more participation that way.
Yeah.
Just as a Twitter space.
Yeah, that's a great thought. So for me, I tried one of our community calls as a Twitter space and did not see additional let's call it a large increase in viewership of that. For me, Twitter Spaces, and this was something because I'm still a little bit newer to those as opposed to running things on Discord. I didn't see as easy of a way to kind of share supplemental information for things. Say, so if we're discussing a KIP or something like that, easily linking things, allowing people that don't want to speak to contribute to the conversation like we can with our text channels. So in that sense, I haven't fully kind of thought out more about transitioning some more of our live events to Twitter that require participation to really kind of be a successful event. Things that don't require participation, community calls where an update is being shared, or a partner is giving a presentation, something like that. I think that does fit pretty well for Twitter Spaces, but I don't need to be the single decider of that. If we have a lot more folks that feel like Twitter is a better venue for town halls, I'm happy to hear that out as well.
Yeah, I know there's a lot of things that go into the Twitter algorithm to just ping them or bring them in. So I don't know if it would be worth not having those extra features, but maybe I wonder if there's something out there that can just broadcast and participate in both places. It's worth looking at.
Yeah. And then I'm just looking through the voice chat comments here. Having Hazard in a town hall outcap, it's a great comment too. Having some more of our leadership, having a bit more of a presence would be a good idea. Genetics here, I see you having a calendar. If you look at our official links channel, if you scroll up a few posts, I think in early or mid-January, I posted our public event schedule that has our reoccurring events, which right now is mainly just town halls and governance workshops. But if there's a better way to maintain and drive that calendar in a more public way, I'm open to any suggestions around that as well. Let's see here. Looking for any other thoughts or feedback on this. I'm not going to levy judgment against your ideas. And for me, I feel like we're at a point where improvement here could be really useful and really kind of maximizing the value out of these. But if no one has any other thoughts about town halls, we can also we can move this discussion to governance workshops, where I think that this might be a good opportunity to kind of revamp that, where if we think about the origin of governance workshops, really kind of came out of KIP 5 and folks looking to put their brains together on one specific draft, and what that morphed to out of that. I think that original governance workshop and then the subsequent ones from that really were driven by community members, were hosted by community members. And then kind of over time, I've kind of taken on a little bit more of a role around those as well. But what we've seen is that, not to sugarcoat it, participation in those has dropped, where I think this last Saturday, there was just 3 or 4 of us there talking, and there wasn't too much of a goal there. So, I think that this is one where, if you compare it to town hall on Friday, 3:00 Eastern time, like everyone's ready for that. That it seems to work for at least this group of folks that join regularly as well. Saturdays seem like a much more challenging time, especially, middle of the day on a Saturday for a large chunk of folks. So, maybe if anyone's got suggestions about, better days to move it to, different times of day, or having a way to drive better engagement out of it, maybe that's setting specific goals for that session ahead of time. Whatever these ideas might be, and these are all things that I've just kind of written down of ways to improve it. I'd love to hear folks have some thoughts around this, especially around hosting them on Saturdays, or around kind of setting priorities for those calls as well. So, if you have any thoughts about governance workshops, or if you've attended one and thought, I didn't like it, and here's why. Well, please hop on up and share your thoughts. I know I've seen a few of you at those at those governance workshops, and it's appreciated to see you kind of give your extra time on the weekends. But if we can find a better fit for it, I want to do anything to make sure that nobody's time is wasted, that we're we're meeting for a reason, not just to meet. Does anyone want to come up on stage and share any thoughts on this? Oh, hey, Troy, hop on up. What you got?
Hey. I mean, I think Saturdays are tough for a lot of people. Definitely the governance stuff is something that a lot of people would probably want to be more part of. I would maybe do it after this. I don't know. It's hard because this can run so long sometimes. It's hard to do a set time.
Right. Right. I think, and this is something that you and I talked about, which was kind of juxtaposing, having 3 hours of meetings on a Friday with, kind of trying to make it accessible for more people.
Okay. Come on up.
Tripe. There you go.
Let's go.
You're unmuted, bud. What's your thoughts? Because we can't hear you.
Discord is so bad at this.
How about now?
There you go.
There you go, bud.
Okay. Sorry about that. Yeah, interesting topic. Having participated in a number of the governance workshops, there were some good points brought up recently that I think we should surface here. And one of those is to have more direct SOFON involvement to kind of set the expectation that their role in the governance, as a liaison at this point, at least between the team and the community for all things governance, to actually have that expectation, that one or more are in attendance, and that opens up the idea that whichever or however many of them are in attendance, we have some actual expectations for them. In my mind, those expectations would be to keep a running tab of the KIP drafts that are in the forum, or any active KIPs. We can prioritize ones that are coming up for vote or currently in a voting state. But yeah, just to have a more structured workshop, just in that sense alone, that we can understand that there will be an outline at each governance workshop of topics that are going to be covered. So if you're putting your time in as a community member to draft something or to bring a new idea forward, that there is going to be an opportunity to have it discussed and get feedback beyond just forum replies.
Mm-hmm. Great feedback. Appreciate it.
I think it's a good point to have that one very much have a very set agenda for that call specifically, where this one can kind of bounce around more. I agree with that, though.
So something that Troy mentioned, and it kind of feeds into setting agendas for the workshops that follow, is looking at town halls and how we manage each topic. How much time it gets for discussion, or what gets brought up for discussions. And so I just kind of want to see if anyone wants to explore that a little bit more too, about kind of time walking different topics on the town halls, or if they want to leave it as it is, where we just kind of organically discuss things until they reach an end. I'm open to any kind of ideas there as well.
I could have a quick comment on that as well. I think could you remind me? I think it's an hour, right, that we set aside for the governance workshop?
Yeah, we typically do an hour, actually, for both, for town hall and for the governance workshop. They're both flexible on that, though.
Right. Okay. Thank you. So an hour always seems to fly by, especially when the conversation is good. So, having an expectation that we can cover, a minimum of 3 topics, let's say, would be good, which puts us at maybe a 10-minute introduction, or rather, maybe that's kind of long, a little 5-minute introduction from the lead of the workshop. 10 to 15 minutes per topic, with allowing some room for overrun on any individual topic. That would bring us close to an hour, and I wouldn't be too much of a fan of extending it beyond an hour, given that it is over the weekend, and we want to keep participation and people's attention that are willing to join. A side comment to that actually is also that I did say, having more direct SOFON involvement, or setting that expectation as well, but it doesn't actually have to be a SOFON. From my impression, I just kind of see that role, as I understand it, to represent that liaison between the community and the team when it comes to governance. But if we can have another role that is explicitly meant for note taking, maybe there's a person who's dedicated simply to consolidating the KIPs, other active KIP drafts where there's overlap, and then also keeping that running tab and prioritizing them to some combination of community attention and instinctual sense of what the team is on internal discussions. Obviously, in the future, longer term, complete transparency there, would be great, and I'm sure that's something that we're keen on working towards. But a different role that would prioritize just keeping the notes, keeping the minutes, and having a sense of what's in the pipeline, so as to be able to consolidate KIP drafts, prioritize them, and be able to either liaise with the SOFONs, or really just own the process of being able to comment and provide some of that feedback based on the context of a KIP, and validate the ideas, invalidate them. And again, just to stress, the note taking is super important, and probably, which is one of the things that would that would have it make sense to be an individual's role that can be owned by one person, because note taking shows that it shows that transparency, and it helps us leave a record of what actions we're taking, and our reasoning behind them. And that's not, to say we're always going to make the right choices, but as a community, it will certainly, I believe, show that we can come together and if anything, learn from past processes and decisions, and how we came to certain conclusions. So yeah, note taking.
Yeah, great. Troy, did I hear you unmute for a sec? You got a thought?
That was just my push to talk. I'm push to talk man, so I was typing.
For sure. So something that Idle Musings wrote in the voice chat that I do want to touch on is talking about kind of pre-planning the agendas and discussing it ahead of time and getting community feedback on that. So for folks that are newer, thinking about how these town halls started, I actually used to use a emoji vote system to set agendas, and I got feedback on that wasn't being effective, and that just a few people could be just driving strategy, and driving the agendas for whatever they wanted. And so, I think that was some interesting feedback. We kind of did away with the emoji voting for agenda setting. But I'm happy to kind of reignite that conversation as well, where, if the community members wanted to take a larger part in driving agendas for these calls, I'm very happy and open to doing that. This is something that, I'm trying to keep as organic of a process as possible. And so, if there are ways to improve around kind of that original bit of energy people want. And if it's them nominating a topic that gets them to show up and discuss it, then I'm very open to that idea. For me, it's, I just, there's some things that I've been wary of and have noticed over the last couple months is that, some folks have been very vocal, whether it's just kind of in the text chats or something else, but they then don't come to the town hall or the governance workshop to kind of talk about that, while everybody's kind of gathered around the table. So for me, whatever it takes to kind of get folks to show up and to provide that necessary feedback that we need to drive governance forward, are all things that I'm interested in. So it's something that Tripe brought up, and continues to kind of get discussed a little bit is looking at the role of the SoFunds, kind of having them come and engage. And if you think about, just SoFunds as just people, they're probably full-time jobs like most of all of us. And if we want something that we want to make it, whether it's mandatory or rotational for having them join discussions and provide comments and feedbacks and validation for ideas, maybe moving it off of that Saturday is a much better idea. And we do it something a little bit differently. But yeah, I'm loving the ideas and the thoughts that are coming up. And so if anyone's got more, feel free to raise, and we'll get you back up on stage. Let me just quickly run back through my notes here. Yeah. So at least let me just say thank you for folks that had hopped up and shared their thoughts on these two topics here. What I think it's looking like is that the folks are happy with town halls on Fridays, and really haven't heard any ideas about if people want to move off of Saturdays for governance workshops. So I'd be interested in seeing where we, if maybe we should just try and take, maybe the next couple of weeks and test some new days for governance workshops and test giving them very specific parameters for that workshop. If we get a little bit more positive engagement through that, I'm happy to see that kind of be some next action steps. But Tripe, you hopped back up. Why don't you share some thoughts?
Yeah, just a quick one. Specifically to your last point, when it comes to the governance workshop, I could see this going both ways, but given the global decentralized nature of this community, I actually kind of think a weekend time as now is not such a bad idea, and kind of opens the doors a bit more than we might expect, given how a lot of people in the community obviously are going to have their own full-time things. My only thing that I would say with that is I would put priority over finding a bit more structure with the workshop and expectations of some kind of note taking and lead in that direction, before we change the timing of it. So I would be saying,
Okay.
keep it on Saturday for now. Would
Mm-hmm.
be my idea, and or my thought, and work towards just the structure first, and then we can obviously go back and play with the scheduling too.
Awesome. Well, before you hop back off, why don't we think that out just a few more steps? So, what do we think is the best process for setting the agenda for that governance workshop? Is that something that we should set at the end of every one of these town halls?
It's a great question. Seeing as it's, I guess personally, if I'm going to be making a decision to attend and I need to make a choice of whether or not I'm going to spend my time on that, it's going to, on a week-to-week basis, it's down to, what topics are being discussed and are they relevant to me personally or to, something I really care about in this community and would like to hear about or voice my opinion on. So to that end, what I'm thinking would be, probably at least a day before, latest maybe a couple hours before, we could try, if it, if that's okay for now, but, whoever's going to compile the topics for that day to have that, be posted in the update channel to say, here's a link to today's topic, or excuse me, today's governance workshop topics. And that way we kind of set the agenda and that can be kind of checked by people that are interested in coming. So again, it's about setting expectations, I guess. So something to establish it beforehand. And then at the close of the meeting, and this will be part of the note taking, I would think, but we can see which ones we got to, which ones were covered, which ones need to, reappear potentially on the next, at the next governance workshop. That's about it.
Okay. Yeah, really great thoughts. Yeah, really, I think that's something that we could, probably trial pretty easily.
Yeah, it does start to sound like it's something that warrants a full-time role, because it's, at the end of the day, it's super important, and I think if it's something that, at least by outward appearance at first, increases the transparency of our decision-making process, I think that's a big win. And I just want to give fair, a fair shake to whoever's up for that they have time, because I think the expectation would be a full-time role to really be scouring the forums, making sure anything that gets brought up in the Discord is accounted for as well, and obviously the note taking at the actual meeting, and really owning that process.
Awesome. We really appreciate your thoughts there. Peso, saw you raise your hand. Why don't you share your thoughts?
I'm going to make this real simple, boys. Our governance is a joke. Simple as no other way to look at it. We have 16 KIPs technically. First of all, right? Let's just rewind. We didn't even start voting on KIP 15 and 16, and they're already published on the GitHub, meaning that it's such a fucking mirage of governance, like, that we know they're already going to pass. They're already published. It's a meme. Every single KIP that has been published has gotten. No, it's in KIP 15. It's not KIP draft.
That's the gap we're trying to close, though.
Has gotten internal lobbying, right? AlCap's proposal for using our revenue to burn, he's friends with Lapras IRL, or at least he knows Lapras. And then every single other KIP has gotten what was submitted by some sort of internal authority or with sort of internal lobbying, aside from the CVX KIP, which was like a Herculean task by the community, to be honest. Every single other KIP submitted by the community, either by, literally anyone, AlCap made some KIP to allocate, $300,000 to marketing, whatever, all of that has a 100% fail rate, and any team KIP has 100% pass rate. So there really isn't any reason for the community to even want to submit KIPs, because there's no precedent for just a boilerplate community KIP passing, and it's really serves as a deterrent for community members to submit ideas, because they don't pass. They don't even get any attention beyond a few forum comments, and then let's brush it under the rug and keep doing whatever we plan to do internally, right? Even then, the CVX KIP, right, it wasn't even executed up to the actual specifications outlined in it, because it was to buy CVX up to an average of $40, Would that have been good for us? Absolutely not. But it was technically voted on and should have been followed, right? Because we obviously just stopped buying and we didn't even hit the sort of limit within the time limit. But anyways, I digress. And then also
Okay, so
you have sort of...
Can I quickly say something?
No. So
No?
let me just finish. And then you also have team members sort of interpreting KIPs however they want, right? So just to allude to the buyback KIP, sort of it was portrayed to us as like, we're buying back $4 million worth of Rook, before the launch of the CG. During the town hall. And I think most community members that voted on it interpret it that way. So then it passes, and then we have all of this lawyer bullshit up to, we might buy $0 of Rook. Like, that is not governance. We put trust into the team based on what they conveyed during a town hall on what that kit meant, and then they're sort of acting upon it in a completely different way than how it was interpreted by the community. So there is a massive amount of distrust between the community and the internal team, in my opinion. Anyways, that is it. Sorry to sort of stop you there, but I'm done. My sort of soapbox rant.
Well, I'm glad you at least came up and shared your thoughts. Priest, I'll get to you in just a sec, but I do want to say that, as someone who plays, I act as the host here of these town halls. I feel like I've given every proposal that's been written the opportunity to be discussed here at the town halls. So that's one thing I'll say on that. The second thing is that I've written multiple drafts that have not reached the vote stage or have not passed or moved forward either. So that's me as a team member saying that as well. So not really 100% pass rate on things that team members have written. But I do understand your concerns, and I appreciate you sharing them with us. But I don't need to sit here and argue. I'd rather just continue to take the feedback, because that's what this is for today, is that I want people to give us this direct, honest feedback. So Priest, why don't you go on ahead and unmute and share your thoughts as well?
Yeah, I kind of just want to kind of echo Peso's thoughts on this. In general, I think seeing how the general reaction of the team to KIP 13, the Rook buyback, has played out, has been quite enlightening, honestly, because I feel like it was really a lot of gaslighting going on, especially if I believe Hazard multiple times mentioned that the purpose of the KIP itself was not to buy back Rook, which I think is just really disingenuous in a way. Because of course you have the optionality, you have worded it in a way where the optionality exists that 0 Rook will be purchased, and it would technically still not be a violation of the wording in the KIP itself. But like, to say that the actual purpose of the KIP was never to buy back Rook, I think is just a way to kind of, it just feels really shitty, honestly. I'm not really sure how else to express that. And I believe that's kind of the general attitude that I've seen a lot with the team towards the community. It's definitely a double-sided sword, because I can definitely see that the community at times has been a little hostile towards the team in numerous aspects. But I believe that's coming from a place of where we feel we don't really get respected in a certain way. Because any sort of objection we voice just gets brushed aside as a non-relevant opinion. And just considering us as like hostile actors, non-good faith actors, is just not a great way, honestly. Not a great way to build a community. I'm not really sure what the general part of me there was, but just kind of wanted to voice my opinion there.
Okay. Well, I only have one comment about KIP 13, and that is that, the way I look at it, how it was written and what's been said about it has all been done in the best way to protect the funds of the DAO. And that would be to not get us front road or ridden, or I don't know my English properly, or to not have folks swing trade green candles on buying. For me, I think that I can see both sides of it for sure. I think that people see the words buyback $4 million. The expectations should align with the general title there. I can understand that perspective completely as well.
Yeah, it's not so much about that. It's just simply that the reaction of the team to the community voicing concerns about this was just, in my opinion, was really badly handled. Because the general response was just like, you're all bad actors. The kit was written in a way where we don't have to purchase anything, so we don't owe you anything, which in of itself is, I think, a pretty poorly thought out strategy, because the community is what built the $100 million treasury, if you really think about it. Because however you want to think about it, in truth, the treasury and the Rook KeeperDAO itself was built because community members kept the Rook token afloat for long enough that the missions given out during the hiding game were enough to subsidize the treasury itself. So, like, acting as if nothing is owed to the community at all, I think, is a very dangerous prospect. And just generally speaking, I believe we're currently trading 30% below treasury value with our product that's been in development for a year, just about to release, or hopefully just about to release. If you're acting as if the purpose of the kit was to buy back Rook at an advantageous price, what is more advantageous than at the current moment? I feel like it's very contradictory, and the actions compared to the words are just very contradictory in nature. Because if the team itself doesn't believe that Rook is a good value buy at 30% below treasury backing with our major product about to launch, like, that doesn't really inspire much confidence for any other holder to actually want to purchase and hold the token. It's just, not great.
Well, I appreciate you sharing your thoughts here. And I'm still welcoming anyone else to raise your hand and share your feedback with us as well. And yeah, hey Matt, I see you hopped up. Why don't you go on ahead and share your thoughts?
Hey everybody, quick comment. I respect what everybody's saying, and as the author of that KIP, I can tell you that the intentions, I think, have been really misconstrued. I think a lot of it was to really make sure we had enough Rook to support payroll. It's not to give a subsidy back to the community, as what was being discussed. And really, the biggest thing I want to say is, the language of it is giving us the flexibility to do it up until the CG launches. And until that launches, I want to say, we shouldn't get too crazy about saying the team is never intending to do it, is never going to do it, because we haven't hit to the point where there's kind of that limit. And I'm not making sense because I have COVID right now. So that's the last thing I'll say. So I'm going to get off stage.
I hope you get better. Just to quickly chime in there, I completely agree, but the way the team responded to us when we were voicing our concerns, the entire response was like, no, we don't have to buy anything if you don't want to. Fuck yourselves, you don't even know how to read. It's just completely condescending. And I agree that it should be done before CG launch and not be done significantly beforehand, because it would just be faded. But the response by the team was not conveyed in that at all. It was just overall very condescending, honestly. So I'm okay if that's the official response. CG has been delayed. We don't really know when it's going to launch, so we're going to wait until a month before the start of DCA. But that wasn't really the response we've gotten. So
yeah, I will just say, because I think I was paying a little bit of attention to that initial conversation as well, is that, I think that the hostility back and forth kind of grew to that point where that response came out. And, something that, maybe we want to consider is that maybe some of that was psyops to avoid getting front run or things like that. Maybe just things for us to consider. But I am really not trying to disregard how you are, how the response was taken and how things were handled, because I think that feedback is very important, and I think that we should strive to do better going forward. So what I'm saying here is just my personal opinion here. But please, if others, are still feeling that way, I'm still welcoming you to come share your opinion.
Yeah, a couple of things I want to just say real fast is, I think when I originally posted the initial KIP for the buyback, I think it was for $6 million. And as soon as that launched, with different language that really had a time limit around it, or I think it was actually dollar amounts, we got front run like crazy. You can go back and pull up the charts and the timing of it, and boom, we saw the front running happen like crazy. So that was really why, and I could totally am acknowledging that maybe the team's response and how we handled and responded to kind of being more lawyer language, but that was just us kind of clarifying what we were intending to do, but we probably communicated that very poorly. And then another thing I want to say is, I think we're all acknowledging that governance has a lot of room for improvement. To the beginning of this conversation, we were looking for suggestions. My personal opinion, I would agree with everybody. I think the SOFON's process is not transparent enough. We don't have set guidelines for them. We don't have lanes for them to operate in a way where we can clearly understand their thought process and why did they or why did they not accept a proposal. And so, if we and I think that's all coming into play here. I think that the debacle with CVX, I think people's frustration with governance is all coming to play here, and I think it's all coming to a front with this kind of buyback being kind of the center point for all these issues. But all I'm asking for is that faith. We have the best intentions for the way we try to structure our language around that buyback to maximize what the Treasury could get out of this opportunity to support us with an asset that really incentivizes people for the long term.
All right. So, just to sort of touch on that, so you mentioned that we sort of the purpose to buy Rook from this buyback is to increase our runway, right, for sort of development, right? But then I look at the token distribution for Rook, and we actually control roughly 550,000 Rook, like actually like 50% of the supply almost we control, right? Because 30% of that is Treasury reserve. So really we don't need any more Rook for sort of runway or sort of accumulate units of Rook. Not that I oppose the buyback at all. It's sort of past, that ship has sailed. So governance, like team should do its thing and follow what was voted on and sort of passed. This is a DAO, right? But why are we so focused on units of Rook for this buyback when the Treasury Reserve, literally like the sort of Treasury, the little Discord on the top right that has 100,000 Rook, and then we also control 450,000 Rook from the sort of initial minting of Rook, is my question basically. I don't know if that was coherent or not, and I had another thing but I forget.
So from my perspective, I think Rook is a very valuable asset just because it aligns and it has a better ability to align incentives. And that's not only from a contributors, which, I hope we'll be releasing, the full compensation details for everybody soon, which will give people better insight into the payroll runway as it relates to Rook. That's one component of it. But then two, with us hoping to integrate really across the ecosystem and really build meaningful partnerships, and especially in these kind of times where things are looking really bearish, we have the opportunity to really engage in really meaningful M&A activity. And we don't want to just give them an asset where, it's ETH or, USDC to some degree. If it's a strategic partnership or some M&A, we want to make sure that our incentives are aligned. And so we need this asset that's able to do that.
That did not make any sense. I was just referring to sort of take a look at the Etherscan, take a look at the token distribution from the Git book. We can, I agree, all everything you said, I agree, but it doesn't pertain to why our focus for this buyback is accumulating units of Rook when we already have roughly 50%, we have 42% of the supply that we have full access to deploy in used as runway or things like that. So I sort of fail to see the goal of using that extra 4 million for buybacks when we already have $46 million worth of just Rook that we have access to for runway, bribe for M&A, Lord knows what, right? That's really where I'm coming from, right? So, yeah.
So I guess I would pose a question back to you, and I know the answer, and this is on us to disclose this. But do you have insight into what our payroll run rate is and how many Rook units are being distributed in over the next 3 to 5 years?
I think it's like 5 years of runway at our current scale, right? So, what my question to you is, let me ask that back to you: is your current runway model factoring in the sort of the Treasury Reserve, the 30% from the Treasury Reserve, or does it only consider what is
strategic reserves?
Yeah.
Okay, just making clarify. No, that we are not factoring that in, and there's numerous reasons that are being worked on for that.
Okay, so your runway sort of projections factor in the sort of 100,000 in the Treasury, which is the 8 million, and not the 36 million. That's the strategic Treasury, the Treasury Reserve from the initial Rook distribution.
Exactly.
Correct.
And
okay.
This is something that is being worked on. There's more clarity to be gotten around the strategic reserves. But in the moment, we need to operate on the assumption because again, we want to operate like a business, and we need to operate in the most conservative manner possible to make sure that we're liquid and that we can continue operating as really as effectively as we want to. And so when we forecast and budget, we need to be more conservative.
Okay, so we want to be more conservative. So why are we spending $4 million of liquid assets to accumulate an illiquid Rook token when we have 38 million that we have access to that isn't factored into your runway calculation?
I thought I just answered that.
Maybe I didn't understand it.
We're not
factoring it in. Okay.
We're not factoring that in.
But how is that conservative? Because then I would consider that liberal even because you're sort of spending sort of more valuable funds sort of technically, right? When you already have such an excess of it, right?
So, so it sounds like you're kind of arguing both sides. Like you're arguing, why are we not spending $4 million? And then you're also saying we should not even come close to spending $4 million on this, which is kind of where this KIP actually landed, which is the up to and at the discretion of.
I'm arguing the point that doing the buyback in the purpose of accumulating units of Rook is not well aligned because we already have so many units of Rook. We should be doing this buyback for other reasons, maybe printing green candles, sort of strategic support at like whenever we dump. Lord knows, I don't really care, but it's
those
sort of
reasons were listed in the KIP of why we're doing the buyback.
But you forgot one thing, Dietz. I cannot read, unfortunately. I can only listen to Town Hall.
Okay.
Also, let's put it in the context of maybe an easier way is just opportunity cost. Do most people here think that when CG launches, that, and I hate using this word, but I think a lot of it's been thrown around, is we're going to see lots of green candles, or is it going to have a very positive impact on the price? Do we feel that positive impact once it launches and continues is going to have a better return than if we were invested in ETH or stables? I would argue yes. I don't know what the market sentiment is, and I think we'll all be just guessing. But if we just look at it in its most basic form, I think that's a pretty good bet.
Let me just quickly chime in there. I generally agree with the sentiment, but I think you're overlooking a lot about the importance of holder sentiment and community sentiment. Because of the recent actions by the governance DAO and just the team itself, I believe pretty much every single community holder in here, will dump on any 50% green candle. Like, I think sentiment in this DAO has been completely annihilated. Due to, in part, of course, the general market, as it's not been great, but also just due to the actions of some of the team members here. And I think that by itself is just an underappreciated kind of variable in all of this.
I mean, I think that's a wild guess right there that people are just going to dump. 50% up from here is like what, $130. So if we move 50% up, if you look at the stats, most people are still probably underwater there. So if they cut on a 50% candle, that's their decision as a trader, just like everyone's decision here.
I think, but it really, the thing is, having that kind of community sentiment, where people, at least in my opinion, will smother any pump, it's just gonna be horrible for adoption. because, like it or not, what drives general attention in crypto is green candles. It is the profit opportunity. And in order to get additional community interest, additional partnership interest, you need to have, first of all, a well-capitalized DAO, obviously, which we do have, but also a good community. And at least in my opinion, I think the community sentiment in here has been kind of smothered. But that might just be my personal assessment of this situation. I think that's just been underappreciated, in my opinion.
Yeah,
Which is also like
I don't have a response for
I
that.
agree with Pesa. Like, I don't believe we need to necessarily do a buyback in order to strengthen our Rook reserves, because we do actually have a decent amount of that. But yeah, that wasn't voiced in the original town hall where we discussed the buyback. Like, I do believe the only sole reason we should have a buyback is in order to create kind of a narrative cycle once we are actually close to CG. But that was also the reason why I was initially in support of like a very, very loose language in the buyback, because I wanted to be very close to CG in order to create that kind of narrative. But that was not how it was actually implemented in the end. It's just like the kind of flip-flopping between what is actually presented and what will actually be passed through.
I will just
I thought that we, in the town hall discussing the buyback, we kind of went in a good bit that the point was to not make a green candle initially and to acquire Rook.
It absolutely was, and there's a recording that I actually listened to again recently in anticipation into this, and it was pretty clear that there was no green candle talk. I think that was probably brought up by others in the community, but I think that was shot down. That's absolutely not the intention, and nobody on the team is ever looking for green candles. We're trying to build something sustainable, and we're trying to make sure we have the right assets to do that.
I said that during the initial town hall discussion, I was I think one of the only people advocating for the buyback to not focus on accumulating Rook. But that obviously it was not implemented in that way. However, the current execution of that KIP does not really reflect the intent to slowly build up our Rook reserves. Because, like, at what point are you going to buy Rook if you don't buy it when the market cap is 30% below treasury value and hopefully CG launches within a couple months? Like, it's not really coherent, in my opinion.
CG hasn't launched
If I may, just a quick comment. Thank you. I think it's pretty clear, at least to me, that when it comes to crypto and the ecosystem as it stands today, KeeperDAO is not here to fit in. We are here to lead. And I find it incredibly short-sighted to make any decisions, as Matt just said, for the people leading this project to make any decisions based on the whims of profiteering and traders. It just does not make sense. And if we're here to build a public good and a brighter future, that is not just words. That is real sentiment. And I think that is the strength that is going to carry us through all of this. And
what do you need to carry through a brutal bear market? The treasury is good, but if you don't have a community, a project dies. It doesn't matter what kind of a product you have. If you don't have zero community engagement, no actual community pushing forward in social media and actually promoting you will die. There's a lot of great projects with a lot of treasuries in ICO 2017 era that have just completely fizzled out. Like, a great treasury is good. You still need community engagement.
Well, yeah, but a lot of those projects also really didn't have a product.
Do we have a product?
Well, yeah, we do. It's just
I'm not out yet, so like.
Okay. I mean, okay.
Until I see it, I'll be skeptical.
Okay. Aiken, you raised your hand. Why don't you go on ahead and share your thoughts?
Yeah, so I've been sitting here just listening. I think there are a couple of things, right? I think that could a better job be done in terms of community communication and engagement? I think there are opportunities there, right? To have one more ongoing communication. Maybe it's reporting, maybe it's weekly reports, right? Some sort of documented way to keep people abreast of what's going on that might address some of these issues. I also think that there's also, right, needs to be maybe a little more clarity on what kinds of communications go out and what the community should expect. Because I think there are some challenges, right? Being on a core team and trying to drive things that create value for the community, there might be certain things you don't want to report, right? For lots of prudent reasons, right? To not telegraph your direction or what you're doing, right? And so you don't get front run, and for other strategic reasons, right? So there needs to be some sort of appreciation that there might be at certain times a lag in terms of communication, or right, there's certain things that the community might not get insights to as quickly as they want, right? So this issue about the buybacks, for example, of Rook, there's nothing that says a team isn't buying back Rook right now. But for them to say, hey, we've bought back X amount of the 4 million or whatever it might be, right, might not be the smart thing to do, right? And there are other considerations that go along with the timing, right? So I think, part of what I think I'm hearing needs to be repaired with the community is there needs to be maybe some level setting on the kinds of information that the core team is able to share on an ongoing basis, the kinds of information that we remain, held close to the vest up until a point in time in the future that makes sense, right? And to continue to have these types of conversations, right, to refine these processes. But I do think that, some statements that have been made, while founded, right, that there has to be some level of rope and trust given to the core team to at least try to execute on directionally what what's happening. And I also think that it's having been on the side of a core team, it's very easy for the community to just sort of point fingers and ask questions and always want information, right? But there needs to be some sort of like reasonable amount of space given to the core team to be able to execute over a decent period of time frame, right? So I would say, right, that there are gaps, and I think the communications could be improved. We should probably focus more on, or try to focus on, how we can improve things, what kind of information the community want to hear, right? If there have been missteps or mistakes in terms of communication, it sounds like certain people believe that. That's okay. Bring it up to the table. But let's think about constructive ways to bridge the gap going forward, and just sort of make sure people know what to expect, when to expect it, and the core team can manage against that.
G-Man?
Yeah. I think I agree. There could be some more. There could be some more merging between what's going on in KeeperDAO and what's going on in the like a work Discord versus a public Discord. Maybe something to ask is, at what stage should things be talked about? Like, can we talk about early stage ideas in the public Discord, or should we keep that under wraps until we know that it's something that we want to pursue? I'm just curious what the community thinks about that, and if that's something that they want to be more involved in. I think more involvement from community managers whose full-time job is maybe communicating that stuff would be nice. But it takes definition, and it takes a clear communication path on what everybody expects and what happens.
Starfire, I apologize. You had raised your hand, and I don't think I've given you a chance to speak. Have we moved past your thoughts, or do you still want to share them?
It was more so just to echo some of Priest's thoughts. It sounds like he's been a holder of the Rook token for a really long time, and I'm in the same boat as him, and have witnessed like some of the mistakes the team and the community has made along the way, and it just seems to be a recurring issue, if that makes sense. I don't know.
Gotcha.
Just a lot of confusion communication-wise, kind of what Aiken was saying, stuff that just can be more transparent. KeeperDAO has kind of always operated with a veil over the core team and what they're building, which is a necessity. And I think people holding the token are just anxious for the coordination game. So I don't know.
Well, I appreciate you sharing your thoughts. I know that we've run a bit longer than usual today, but I'm not going to close this out until I made sure that everybody that wants to share their thoughts have. So if anyone's got some other feedback or other items for us today, I'm more than happy to get you up on stage here and share your thoughts as well.
I think sorry if I just may make one more quick point. I believe like a lot of the underlying issues here just come from a general lack of perspective that's obviously going both ways, both from the community to the core team and also from the core team back to the community. I think that's an underlying issue that's kind of spreading itself and it's manifesting itself in all of the other issues we've had, in my opinion. And I'm not really sure what the best way to solve this is, but I would be just interested in hearing the general core team's like just view of what the point of the KeeperDAO community is, or what they think of the current community. Because at least in my opinion, I think internally, that might just be speculation, but I believe internally, at least, I'm not quite certain that the team really likes a lot of the current community members, which is also, we can see obviously by a lot of the current timeouts, just the general lack of respect when talking to community members. And I believe like you kind of view us as parasitic entities of whatever sort that are solely here for financial gain. Of course I'm here for financial gain, but I also deeply believe in the underlying protocol and the underlying mission that KeeperDAO is trying to achieve. And just because somebody is a financial speculator does not mean they cannot contribute to the project's success in the long term. I think that's just a general viewpoint that has been, misconstrued in my opinion.
Well, I want to just say one thing to that is that, for me as a full-time employee now, or contributor, whatever you want to call us, I started in your exact position. Started aping in, and then I started volunteering my time and kept volunteering. And then I started on a grant work and worked on a grant project, and then kept volunteering my time, and then worked my way into a labs role that has now become a full-time position. And if you look at the folks that are along the right side under the core labs team, pretty much all of us have that same story. So I think that when you say that we don't like the community or that we completely don't value the community, that doesn't add up, because our full-time contributors are coming from these same groups of people. And for me, I know I get defensive about certain things, and if I start an argument with you, I mean, that is what it is. But I still think that we will still continue to hire from the community. I still think that we need the community 100%, that we drive, it drives things like new conversations with other protocols, that we get new ideas for products, that we see new places for us to explore in terms of marketing or awareness or other ideas. So I disagree that as a core contributor, that thought that we don't care about the community. I truly wholeheartedly disagree with that thought.
It's good to hear. Just a quick question, like I think at least Pesos and Synth's application to actually become a part of the core team has just been kind of like floating in the abyss for like months now. That's another thing, like just viewing the actions of the team, it's just like leaving core contributors or core community members that have helped out KeeperDAO immensely, more than some of the core members have, just like leaving them, stringing them on for months at a time. It's just not what I would like to see from a core team that has respect for its own community. That's just like, it doesn't really signal that to me.
Well, I don't want to comment on individuals here as well. And for us, something that we've tried to convey to people, and probably poorly, is that our hiring process and onboarding is still a work in progress. We're still making sure that roles we create are roles that are still going to be needed in 3 months, that are still going to be needed a year from now, that are fully aligned with the rest of the missions of what we're trying to accomplish, that these folks are going to be able to work easily with other people that are full-time contributing as well. There are a multitude of different things that any type of position is going to be judged on. So every individual case is different, and then that's really what I can say to that. But really, as we continue to try to scale up and try to hire and try to grow this out of what it came from, which was 5 core founders creating this product. We're really trying to do it intentionally with the right processes, with the right ideas in mind, and that is moving slow. And I think that it's better for us, at least in my opinion, that we're taking the time to do it right than it is for us to throw money at problems or at hiring people and then firing them or anything like that. I'd rather for us to really take the time to design things out, to discuss them as a team, to work through problems internally, and that has taken time, and so I understand the frustrations that community members have felt there, and for me, as someone that went through much of that same process, I lived through some of those same frustrations, and so for us, I just really want to harp on the fact that we're trying to do this as intelligently and as consciously as possible, thinking about not just the now, thinking about long term, and building the team right in the vision that we've created for it.
And just to piggyback off of that, DAOing is really hard. It's nascent. This is a whole new paradigm in how people coordinate from a work perspective, from a community perspective, and how technology is managed by a collective group of people who have different intentions, and there's some good, some bad. I'm not trying to say anything's parasitic, but to your point about being, maybe the team sees things as parasitic, the community as being parasitic. I think that's just due to the nature of us going through these major growing pains. A couple examples. When we were talking about the buyback, my intention was to really support enough runway, but I can't relay the full details about comp yet. It's because we're still very much in movement. Our reorg is still very much in play, and we just haven't got to the point where we can disclose those. And so that's going to cause natural frustration with people who are left in the dark. And we're building a product that we're trying to make sure has a sufficient moat and is taking, way longer than anybody expected, but, has such high potential. And, you connect that with people's livelihoods and what they're investing their time and effort and money into. And when we can't give them the full details, people are going to get pissed off, and then they're going to get mad at the team, and the team's going to get frustrated, those people get mad at them. So these are all natural growing pains, and we're really working diligently. And hopefully maybe some people see that, maybe some people don't, but, behind the scenes, that's part of it, is people are heads down, and maybe some people have de-emphasized, community communication versus just really building something great and making sure that we can develop something in a timely way where we don't have to keep people in the dark forever. So that's the only thing I'll kind of say with that.
I think that a lot of the people that are building in this project also come from an MEV background. I don't know if you guys have spent much time in Flashbots, but MEV is something that is quite adversarial, and it's difficult to work on things and communicate everything that's going on without leaking information that might give adversaries an upper hand. In the Flashbots Discord, no one's going to tell you some of the things they're working on, because as soon as they do that, then they're going to create a ton of competition. So I think it's a really difficult thing to balance here, because you need to be able to communicate things in a way that everyone understands what's going on, but also figure out what you should not leave to the public Discord in terms of communications. And I think we need to define clear divisions between what should be talked about in the public Discord and what should remain in development until it's ready to be released.
Yeah, if I could chime in quickly, I think that's kind of where I was trying to go, right? It feels like expectations need to be set around what kind of information the community should expect and how they should expect that information. Is it meetings? Are there reports? Are there, right? And as much as possible, particularly around things like delays, right? If certain delays are in, right, just being able to be, forthcoming, right? I think as much as possible that people know what's going on, as much as can be said, right? Because I think wherever there are these gray areas or long delays of things, people sort of make things up. I think one other thing too, in general, and it's just kind of like bouncing around in my head. It just feels like a lot of KIPs, particularly around specific operational strategies or goals, should need to be vague, and they need to remain vague, because if they're too specific, one, right, it gives people potential information they can front run, but two, it doesn't give a team flexibility to sort of adjust as the market might adjust or as other factors might change. So I think in as much as possible as writing these operational KIPs or KIPs around very specific things, like they need to be kept vague, and I think in as much as the community is informed as to the reasons for that, I think they'll be generally acceptable. And yeah, so just my additional 2 cents.
Yeah,
Appreciate
just
you
quickly.
too. Oh, go ahead, Priest.
Yeah, so just to quickly correspond to that, I completely agree. I was one of the people that were actually advocating for a more like open language in order to give the team more leeway in order to decide how they actually want to execute this KIP. However, that is all kind of predecessor on the community really believing in the ability of the team to execute well, first of all, and just the honesty in the execution itself. And I believe that is what, at least personally, was really damaged in by the team's response to the community's aggravations about KIP 13. Like, what was damaged was my personal belief in the team's ability to execute in a manner that is kind of like most optimal. And it kind of like, it's generally just not a great place to be, because I agree, you don't want KIPs to be super specific, and otherwise you give actors the ability to front run any single operation. Like, there's no real good place if you don't believe the team itself can execute in the most optimal manner. Like, you need to give them leeway, but that leeway is only possible if you actually believe them to be capable of doing that. So at least personally, I'll probably refrain from like commenting much more on this issue until KIP 13 itself and CG, the coordination game, is out, because by then we'll see what the endpoint is. We'll see if the KIP actually has been executed in a way that's has been executed in the best way possible, and how the execution is actually handled. Because currently, like, you must admit, at current point, the only reference point the community has for execution at that scale is Convex, which obviously wasn't great. So, like, there's obviously natural skepticism about such an endeavor. So I'll refrain from any further points on this matter until the KIP itself is executed and finished, because by then we'll be able to actually look at it and see what happened. And just to quickly say, like, I deeply appreciate the entire team, especially you, Deeds. Like, you guys have been great, and I have absolutely no doubt that you're all working extremely hard. But it's just at times really frustrating to deal with, like, the manner in which, at least in my opinion, the response to community issues and community sentiment and community anger has been handled. This is not in no way a reflection on the on any single core member. I believe you all are working extremely hard, but it's just like an amalgamation of the entire interactions between everybody.
Well, I do appreciate you saying that, and for me, I understand that, let's call it our bedside manner can be improved for sure. But hey, Lafayette, I saw that you had wanted to say, so don't let me grandstand. Why don't you go on ahead and unmute and share your thoughts?
Yeah. This will be pretty short. I'm not like an active community member. I found out about Keeper from an Epicenter podcast a long time ago. and thought it was cool, and so I like sometimes jump in and kind of like see what's going on, and that's kind of what happened with this space. But I will say, from more of a passive observer, like everyone knows, like so much goes on in the Web3 space, and there's just a lot going on. But yeah, like it definitely seems like this town hall, like there's definitely some like rough spirits and that type of thing. And definitely like when like that's it, like you said, like DAOs are new, they're tough. There's a lot of kind of like little things that everyone's trying to work through to coordinate more properly. But yeah, definitely like being as transparent as possible without I guess like obviously giving away too much information or that type of thing. I guess just like from a passive observer, I don't know a whole lot about what's going on, and I just thought Keeper was a cool project. It's actually like one of the fourth things I added on Discord, so it was pretty new to kind of the projects I was exploring. And yeah, that was kind of my thoughts just sitting in and listening to this.
Peso, come on up.
I have a question for you, Crypto Lafayette. Do you like the sort of bag holder syndrome that we have, where we sort of like say like, oh, price is going down and things like that? Or does that sort of deter you from spending more time in the Discord? I'm actually very curious, because that's something that's been sort of discussed internally, I think, about sort of how sort of we should curate community behavior, should I say. And you say you're a lurker, so I'm kind of curious as to sort of how you feel when you sort of see some of the bearish sentiment in trading chat, let's say, as sort of camaraderie. Or do you see it as sort of something that concerns you with the community? I'm just curious, honestly. Like, this is just sort of me shooting the shit with you.
Yeah. I would say it's definitely more a deterrent. Like, I don't personally have any exposure to, I guess like the Rook token at all, and like I'm a college student, and so like I'm more active with kind of my own like college DAO and just like the stuff that's going on. But I just like thought the Epicenter podcast, I think with one of your founders, was good. It seemed like you guys were doing a lot of cool stuff. And that's why I kind of like keep it on my radar. But yeah, it's definitely like I guess like passive people that are like trying to do a lot of different stuff. Like I have the sentiment that a lot of people like passively appreciate Rook, but aren't necessarily aware of what is actually going on inside KeeperDAO, which is why I was really surprised listening to this talk. I wasn't expecting that when I just kind of like randomly hopped in here. Just kind of the unhappy sentiment. And I also get like, yeah, it's like stuff is pretty bearish, but like in terms of like price bearish, yeah, that makes sense. But in terms of like the space has never been bigger. I remember like 2-3 years ago when I like first started having like financial exposure to the space. Like it was so small that you could literally like talk to anyone, and now it's massive. And there's just more and more inflow of like top talent. I'm at my university, like we've only continued to see like more and more inflow of people that are like way smarter than me. I feel like I'm kind of like losing my edge as the space moves so quickly. But yeah, I'd say it's definitely a deterrent in terms of like, oh wow, I wasn't expecting this from KeeperDAO.
Well, we appreciate you hopping up and sharing your thoughts. You know, as I've said, you know, this all is feedback that we're looking to hear. But hey, we're at an hour and a half now. So I think that it's kind of a good point for us to wrap up here and call it a day. So I'm going to make a last call for any comments here. So if anyone else has kind of got some parting thoughts, here's your chance. Let's start with G-Man.
I think that a lot of the things talked about here will probably just be resolved with the growth and the hires. I mean, there were a ton of job postings created, and now is the time for KeeperDAO's growth. And as they grow, and the responsibilities are clearly defined on different job titles on who's doing what, instead of having to juggle so many things and develop so many things at once. A lot of these things will be resolved, and things will only get better from here.
Thanks, G-Man. All right. Has anyone else got any parting thoughts? All right. Well, hey, really everyone that attended today, that came up on stage and had the courage to share their thoughts and come up here and chat with us and chat with the community. Just want to say thank you again. For us, we're still going to have the the governance workshop tomorrow at 3:00. So if I see you guys there, I'm going to work on creating an agenda and a focus for that one for tomorrow as well. So I'll make an announcement tomorrow morning about that, possibly even tonight if I land on the right one by then. But outside of that, just one last reminder: get on Snapshot and vote for 15 and 16. But outside of that, I hope everyone has a good weekend for folks internationally, and especially in Eastern Europe. Hope you and your family stay safe. And I would encourage anybody that's looking to get involved. There's a number of great Twitter threads out there to look at ways for that they can assist people that are in more troubling circumstances than say I am right now. But outside of that, again, just another message of gratitude for you guys all joining us today. And we'll keep building, we'll keep growing, and we'll be talking to you soon. So thanks again for joining, everybody.
Thanks, Deeds. Thanks, everyone.